Well, I think it's way outside the norm of ridiculous, if you want to know the truth of the matter, to call out the people of the state of Texas, because that's what she did. I just happen to be the governor that signed that legislation. I support it, but the vast majority of the people of the state of Texas support that. So, you know what Secretary Clinton did was basically say that the people of the state of Texas don't know what they think.
Well, but it was the politicians, the legislature.
Well, but we get elected by the people, and you go poll the people of the state of Texas, they are for having a voter ID.
Specifically, the argument that she and other Democrats are making is, why would you say that it's okay to have a gun registration, a gun license, and not a college ID?
Well, why would you say that you need a photo ID to get a library book or to get on an airplane? This is a state issue, and this is an issue that the people of the state of Texas overwhelmingly support. And so I don't know who she's playing to, but she's not playing to the people of Texas, and I don't think she's playing to the Americans that believe that the sanctity of the vote is really important, and you need to have a photo ID to go vote. It's that simple. The people of Texas wanted it, and whichever state Hillary Clinton considers to be her home state,
what about her
she goes home and she argues there not to have it.
And what about her argument, which is true, that a federal judge said it was not just discriminatory, but with discriminatory intent?
I could probably find a federal judge to say just about anything. I mean, the Supreme Court is, well, I think if this goes to the Supreme Court, clearly the people of the state of Texas, in this case, will be right.
What about just generally the idea of voting rights and the idea that she proposed, which is to have early voting at least 20 days ahead of time, to have election day, a national holiday, and so forth, just to make it easier for people to vote?
I think we make it pretty easy in the state of Texas for people to vote. So, I don't know what her beef is with the people of the state of Texas about voter ID, but I think she's on the wrong side of the issue.
Let's talk about the economy. In your announcement speech this week, you sounded like a populist. You said capitalism is not corporatism. You said it's not a guarantee of reward without risk. It is not about Wall Street at the expense of Main Street. I've seen it written that you sounded more like Elizabeth Warren than members of your own party.
Well, I think I sounded like a boy who grew up on a dryland cotton farm in a house that didn't have running water. I grew up in a place where my mom and dad both had to work really hard. And I don't think it's right for Wall Street to be able to walk away from bad mistakes and the people on Main Street have to pay for it. That, if that's populism, then I'm proud to be a populist on that issue. But the bottom line is we need to be putting policies into place where Main Street folks, Dodd-Frank's a great example of it right here in Iowa. These bankers and these small community banks are being strangled by regulations, and they can't loan money to their farmers or their small businesses. That's just not right.
So what would you do about Wall Street? Would you try to break up the big banks? I mean, how would you actually...
Listen, if a bank makes bad decisions, they ought to fail. Nobody ought to be too big to fail. And all these regulations did was codify it into law, and I'd certainly get rid of those. You make a mistake and you make bad choices, you need to pay a price in this country. I don't care who you are, whether you're a big Wall Street firm or you're a big bank. That's what our bankruptcy laws are for. I wasn't for GM getting them restructured. They should have been gone through bankruptcy, just like everybody on Main Street would have. I mean, this is pretty simple from my perspective. Treat everybody the same.
This is Iowa, and you're doing pretty well here considering how many people are in the race, but you're still only at 5%. What is your plan to reintroduce yourself to the people of Iowa after your not so wonderful race in 2012, even you admit?
We'll be here a lot. In 2011, the first time I even came to Iowa was on the day right after the straw poll. So being in this state, introducing yourself to people in a very personal way. I don't care whether it's 2 people or 2,000 people. If I get invited to come to Iowa, I'm going to be here. There may be somebody that comes to Iowa more than I do, but if they do, they better pack their lunch.
So Iowa is the place that you got to do well. You're putting a lot of eggs in this basket.
We're putting eggs in New Hampshire's basket and South Carolina's basket as well, but we intend to do very well here. We'll do whatever we need to do as well as we can in the caucuses.
Last question, I have to ask you about the Rick Perry country rap. Where did that come from?
Colt Ford is Colt's actually a golfer but he's turned into quite a very good country rapper. So Pete Scobell, who is a dear friend, Navy SEAL, and close friend of Marcus and Marcus Luttrell's, he's who came to me and said, hey, listen, I got an idea for a song for your campaign. And so anyway, that's what it turned out. Matter of fact, it's on iTunes today, first day, so go to iTunes and buy it and get a little country rap going.
All right, well, one day I'll have you do your Rick Perry rap for me. Not today.
Not today.
Thanks, Governor.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.